Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a video and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Today, I'm privileged to welcome a dear friend, a fellow YPOer, a very accomplished business from Kenya, Dhruv Pandit. Dhruv, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Motabhai.
Thank you. Dhruv is the CEO of the Fedha Group in Kenya, a property developer with over 50 years experience. He manages a number of residential, retail, commercial, and hospitality properties in Kenya. He has recently opened executive residency by Best Western and residential high-rise Capital M in Kenya. And as I mentioned, he's a fellow YPO member. So Dhruv, tell me, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
Thank you, Ashutosh. You really made me reflect on these questions. So I thought, apart from the usual milestones, most people go through of marriage, children, those are very dear to our hearts.
Sure.
But for me, it was when my my middle brother actually passed away in a plane crash when I was about 12 years old.
Wow.
So I was 10 years younger. I was the latecomer in the family, you can put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly, looking back at that time, apart from the tragedy, it didn't really change much. But when I came back from university, I actually joined the family business perhaps 5 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Felt that obligation to come back. I was tired of learning. And really, that just shaped everything else, I think. The second milestone was being CEO of the family business at 29.
Wow.
Very early age, and I promptly joined YPO later on, which I think was a co-located milestone, if I can put it that way, around the same age.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, when my father passed away 16 years ago, that was another milestone because it meant that my brother and I actually had the chance to reflect on our family business.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we felt financial services at that time wasn't where we were going to have a competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And also, being a highly regulated business wasn't much fun, I'll be honest. Especially when you're responsible for other people's money. So that led to the change a couple of years later for us to exiting those businesses, very successful trade sales.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we reinvested the proceeds and all of that in Kenya into our real estate businesses. So 3 very major milestones.
Fabulous and an amazing milestones. So Dhruv, tell me about the Fedha Group. What are the range of activities you have there?
So we're in the real estate business as developers. So the philosophy is mainly to hold to own for the longer term. Of course, tactically, we do sell depending on the market cycle. These are long cycle businesses. So that's the core philosophy. And then into sectors, it's residential, villas and apartment blocks. More apartment blocks these days because of densification.
Mm-hmm.
Commercial buildings, a little bit of retail. So we have some shopping centers and retail outlets in some of our commercial buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And also the new, relatively new, is hospitality, which is apartment hotels.
Okay. And, I was going to ask you some questions about the family banking business, but you mentioned that you wanted to exit from the whole thing. But
Mm-hmm.
the question I want to ask you is that when you sold a family jewel,
Mm-hmm.
what were your lessons?
So it really, it's a fascinating question. And the joke is after years of what I call forum therapy. So for those of you who know, YPO Forum is your personal board of directors.
Okay.
If you'd asked me this question maybe 1 or 2 years after the fact, I would have said that, it was time. It was all about, the big banking institutions were coming into the country and you could either partner with them or you could compete against them. And the choice became very clear. But actually, if you ask me now, I think the big lessons were that as family businesses, we really need to understand the distinction between ownership, in other words, being shareholders, and the appointment of directors to run the businesses properly.
Correct.
And in a family business, it gets very confusing. And really what that process taught us is that we needed to take a step back, take the emotion out of it and do what's best for the business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do what's best for the business with those 2 governance roles that I mentioned, really clear, the family will automatically benefit.
Correct.
So I think that's the biggest revelation for us,
Mm-hmm.
is that if you always look as a stakeholder that this is a business that is a jewel, as you say, but you don't necessarily have to own the jewel forever. You do what's best for the business. Everything else will follow naturally.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's move on now to your real estate business, which is what you are now doing. In most developing countries, real estate has been pretty disorganized, and that's when groups like yours and groups all over the world in the developing world have started to change real estate. What are you doing differently for real estate in Kenya?
Wow, that's a fascinating question. Because as we know in real estate, really as developers, we try and hire the best consultants, but then there are consultants who work for anybody in the market. So what is the competitive advantage or the philosophy? I think what I'm proud about is that very recently our new projects, and indeed we've made a call, all our future projects will be actually sustainable buildings. I've been interestingly gotten very passionate about it, and it's not just good for the environment, it just makes good business sense. Okay. It's a myth out there that being sustainable costs more, because if you really dig deep into the philosophy and you push your consultants, you can get it done at the same cost. And actually your operating cost of these buildings is actually much lower and much more sustainable. So I think that's where we can claim to be a little bit in the pioneering side of things. Of course, within the appropriate market conditions, we can't do everything like perhaps a European company can do, which is zero impact on the planet, or at least the achievement, but we can definitely minimize. And really sustainable building, I think people forget, is actually about healthy environments for the people who live and work in them. And that's actually the main goal for all of this.
And, you're in commercial properties, you're in residential properties. In most countries, and I've spoken to several real estate, tycoons like you, is there a link between the development of commercial properties and residential properties in Kenya?
In some way, yes. I think I have to think about the longer cycle before COVID, because certainly, what has happened in the COVID environment, this work from anywhere concept has come through. So I think it depends on the commute times, I think is there. So traditionally in Nairobi, at least, and I'm just going to put it here, because of the lack of road infrastructure and public transport infrastructure, people, if you're living away from your place of work, your commute times can even be 5 hours a day. It really is a long time. So you want to try and live near where you work. So certain areas which are commercially zoned become automatically attractive to areas around that where people want to work, right? To live close to your work. So that linkage definitely has been there from that point of view. Has it loosened a little bit? Yes. Could it loosen even more where it goes the other way, where you have smaller office hubs near the residential areas? So you may have a small house, you may have 2 people working there, children, pets, hardly a conducive working environment, I'd have thought. But maybe you can take a short commute to a serviced office place next to you. Mm-hmm. These are some of the things that I'm thinking about over the longer run. But we'll have to see how the cycle plays out. I don't think it's a bit too soon to discern trends, I think.
Okay. And, moving further from that, you spoke about young people. From what I see and read about, young people, which are the millennials, and Gen Zs are just coming in, they're not buying, they prefer to rent. Is that something similar that's happening in your part of the world? And if so, what is that going to do to the business?
So fascinating. I think generally over here, because the affordability is not there because of commercial considerations, loans being very expensive, there are only 20,000 mortgages in the whole of Kenya.
Wow.
And it's crazy. We actually were one of the pioneers in our financial institutions business to do mortgages, but you can't fight the tide, as it were, right? But coming to this, actually the trend is still there that I think call them the millennials. I know many of them of that age group who hate being grouped into one catch-all word. So I'm using that term just for convenience sake. Will probably rent more because their incomes are going to be far less, shall we say, predictable. Their mobility will be much more. I think this is the generation that are global citizens by nature. Very much travel oriented, and not even looking at a house, for example, or a place to live, but just even a car. Would they even own a car? I don't think so. I mean, why?
Yeah.
Why would they? Why would they even? In fact, I'm looking at the generation beyond. Why would they even want a driving license? Perhaps might be even another question, right? And strangely enough, I'm actually seeing a similar trend a little bit. It's I won't call it a trend, but at least you keep your ears open. The older generation, say 55, 60, coming to retirement, want to be also much more less tied to these physical things. Want to travel a lot more. The children have gone away. Maybe they're not coming back. They're actually downsizing to more apartments, actually. They may own it. But who wants to have the headache of locking up keys and, if you have house staff to actually put them on leave and worry about who's going to feed the pets and, all of these sorts of things. The freedom is going to be there. So I think the market is definitely going to get more fragmented. And what does it mean for the institutions? I think we'll be more asset owners and service providers. But it's got to be a higher level quality of service as well. That's the expectation. So you're seeing this wonderful blur between commercial, in fact, hospitality and residential. So we have to come with a hospitality mindset, even to our commercial tenants.
Okay. Now tell me about your recently opened executive residency by Best Western, as well as your Capital M.
So thank you for that. It sounds recent. Actually, I must actually update my resume to you later on. It's actually been 2 or 3 years now, not so recent. But basically, we wanted to climb up the value chain from a normal apartment block. Serviced apartments then became kind of an interesting space. But actually, pioneering became an apartment hotel. So the brand was the first in the world. We wanted just to step in with a 3 to 4 star brand rather than going fully 5-star. Any new venture, experiment, right? And it's been very successful. And again, the concept is that, most serviced apartments, you pay extra every day for an extra service that you want, daily cleaning or whatever. You're tied into, say, a year's contract, very inflexible. We flipped the model and actually said, you know what, customer is king. Check in for a day or check in for a year. Come in when you want, leave when you want. And you get an apartment and you get a full hotel service, including air miles.
Wow.
So the idea is that, yes, it's a slightly higher price point, but your flexibility is so extreme that literally, we've had people come in every day and they want a bigger environment. They are fully kitted apartments. But our longest staying customer has been with us 3 years. And actually, the business model, maybe my hotel friends would cry in horror at my return per square meter, right? But at the same time, I'm de-risked. Last year, we stayed open despite all the travel collapsing, because our long stay customers kept us there. Kept our folks in employment, which for me was the most important thing. And now we are climbing back out. So it shows the resilience of the model.
Fantastic. And this kind of a model would probably be ideal for the large number of Indian tourists who go there. Take an apartment on rent for a week when they go as tourists. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and so we have it. Sorry, Ashutosh. I was just going to echo what you said. The family market is very interesting because families like to stay together, especially extended family, that sort of thing. This concept of adjoining rooms, the Middle East gets really well. I mean, they really do it. But still, there's that doubt in the back of your head. Do I have to cross a corridor or do I have to go somewhere? Here in an apartment, you're completely, and we do have 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartments in our new developments.
No, that would be fascinating. And also tell me about Capital M.
So that was a brand that we actually put together for the newest one, similar concept. In fact, we then felt enough confidence with the executive residency experience. It's in a different part of Nairobi. So we've actually signed with another brand. So that Capital M brand was just for our architectural plans and all that. We've signed with another major international brand to actually open. Unfortunately, COVID happened. We would open the end of last year. Hopefully, end of this year, we will open and do it. But it's far more luxurious concept. But I think we're going to be a bit more smart about how we open, just to make sure that we match the demand that we expect to come back. Vaccinations being more prevalent, travel will open up again, and I think people are desperate to travel now. And they'd want to do their bucket list items.
Yeah, I agree. So now, one more question before I move to the next segment. Any plans to grow beyond Kenya?
We've thought about it a lot. And I think probably not. And I'll tell you why. It's the old, very, very old saying, but it's a true saying of location, location, location. And really, you need to pick and choose your locations. And it's becoming so critical that you not just think about today's, but how the infrastructure will develop around you. And all of this. I would say that, so as direct family business, probably not. But as a family, also, we're thinking of actually moving to the family office concept. Now, for me, if we move to that, then in partnership with other people, then why not?
Sure.
So, but it has to be somebody with that location expertise in that, whichever market it will be in future. And frankly, let's not be greedy. Why do we have to own the whole cake? I think the model has to be in future is how do we partner with the right people? How do we collaborate so everybody can win?
Well said. So I'm going to now move on. For someone who has seen so much of a transition in your family business, is building such amazing properties, what are some of the core values you believe in, Dhruv?
Yeah. No, I think that's something my brother and I, Rajbhai and I, actually speak about a lot these days, because crisis tests you, right? And and you have to take the time to reflect. What is the opportunity in this crisis? It's something we've started right at the beginning, and actually, the key concept here is we actually build relationships. We actually don't build properties, I think, because building properties anybody can do, right?
Correct.
The consultants we work with, the customers we work with, indeed any other supplier or the ecosystem around us, we just invest in our relationships. And I prefer somebody has a challenge with us to actually email, phone straight away, and we try and fix the issue. Challenges will happen, mistakes will happen, disputes indeed will happen. I mean, it is a commercial world and a volatile world, but so long as that relationship is preserved, and if it has to be severed in some way, let's do it on an amicable basis. Let's walk away and honestly, I think for us is leave the last 5% on the table. It's not worth it to prolong discussions, negotiations, and the pain.
Right.
That 5% will come back 50% in future relationships.
Very interesting. And one more question before I move to some questions for you personally. You must be employing a very large number of people all over in different projects. What would you say is your leadership style?
So actually, fascinatingly enough, we view ourselves as project managers. So actually, our core staff levels are actually quite small. Even the hospitality business is actually outsourced to a third management company, to competency. So actually, our team is not that big. Indirectly, of course, with the suppliers and contractors and all that, there is a floating workforce that is employed. My leadership work style, wow, that's a great question. I would say consultative. Very flat. Rajbhai and I are very impatient in some ways that, if it takes longer than an hour or a day to make a decision, there's something wrong.
Okay.
Let's get on with it. It's kind of one of the other core values. Strategically, I think that sometimes hurts us because, it's a true entrepreneur's dilemma, right? That we're impatient, but at the same time, you find out whether your mistakes or your challenges have actually worked out later on or not.
Correct.
I think professional would be another one. We have zero tolerance for office politics.
Okay.
Really, honestly, we just don't believe in it. And I think, even if you speak to our staff, it's like, look, let's deal with the issue. And in some way, I think maybe this is, we aren't growing as fast as we should. That's been a debate for us. But on the flip side, I think we're extremely forgiving employers, in the sense that, you haven't met your targets. Okay, fine. What do we do to make it fixed rather than changing the person or looking for somebody more aggressive?
That's amazing.
Well, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I won't say everything is hunky-dory.
No. But for you to
These are
articulate so
real
well,
life things.
yeah, that's fantastic. So, Dhruv, I'm going to now move to the last segment of our conversation. There is some questions for you personally.
Sure.
My first question is that from where you stand today, as you look back at everything and as you look ahead at all the things that you want to do, what does success mean to Dhruv?
Oh, wow. Good question. Why I'm pausing is that I don't want to give you a trite or a pre-recorded answer, if I can put it this way. Certainly been thinking about it a lot more. I think success means knowing who you are, actually, and what is it all for. So yes, definitely. As I came back to that family life. What are the trade-offs with the business life as well, and also what are you doing for yourself? I mean, I have a core philosophy that if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after other people. So that personal growth side has to come for it. But the underlying success, I think, is not so much a particular goal or a particular milestone or a particular achievement. It's actually the journey. Are you actually moving ahead? If you're moving ahead in all spheres of your life, in balance, and that balance will change. Life will throw you off, and you will get obsessed about one thing, but you have to come back and go into, spend your time on something else and rebalance again. So for me, it's not so much of a linear and static thing. It's just moving. So long as you're moving ahead and your downs are higher than your last highs, higher than your last highs. So, your trend is still overall
upwards,
higher in some way, then I think you're progressing. And, an artificial measure of success doesn't interest me anymore, to be honest.
Very interesting. And a follow-up question to that is that who or what inspires you?
If I can just rephrase that slightly and say what fulfills me.
Okay.
It's because inspiration is great, but it has to lead to some sort of fulfillment, sure. Right? And I found myself actually and loving, and this is where I think I found my third place. You need a third place between work and family and home life. That third place, for some people it's charity, for some people it's what you're doing right now. I know it's the brand called you is your third space. For me, it's YPO. And really, why? Because I thrive on connecting people. I find that if I can connect two random who've never met each other for their mutual benefit, right? I feel it sparks something nice in me. It really does. And that's why I commit a lot of time to it. And also it helps. I love joining the dots in terms of different ideas, different philosophies, concepts, and always learning from different cultures. And frankly, the breadth of people's experiences is so huge. If you actually learn how to listen, I find that's an amazing challenge for me. I'm always trying to think ahead as to anticipate my response to somebody, but actually learning how to listen, which is your fantastic skill, I must say, Ashutosh, is a new life skill. So somewhere in there, I'm a fulfilled person.
Fantastic. So I've got time for one more question, and this question is going to be on failure.
Excuse me,
on failure.
Ah.
I have a new book coming out next week on failure. And again, my hypothesis for a long time has been that people in South Asia or Asia, or maybe even Africa, don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always told, come first, go to the head of the line, etc., and that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. My question to you is that what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
Absolutely. And I fully believe in that core philosophy that actually it's not failure. It's actually an area of improvement. And it came much later in life, funny enough, through my children. The school they actually go to, that is the number one philosophy in that school. And it's changed our mindset completely. Looking back, I think it's sometimes doing nothing is actually a big learning, is actually a decision that you can take. Sometimes we actually end up doing things for the sake of doing things. It's really hard to do, is to do nothing and just sit tight. And in some ways, I think that lesson has held us in good stead last year. I think one of the other massive areas of improvement was actually not sticking to values, or a core discipline. If when you're up and coming and you want to, I would say, push the boundaries. That's a very slippery slope. So we've come on the wrong side of actually breaking policies, and actually 9 times out of 10 it's actually fallen apart. So I think matured enough to say that, listen, debate the policy, agree a change in policy, then do what you want to do. But if you can't convince people to change the policy, then don't worry. It's not worth it.
Fabulous. Dhruv, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for taking me through this incredible real estate journey that you are going through in Kenya. And I wish you lots of success with the opening of Capital M in its new avatar towards the end of this year. I'm going to look forward to receiving a message from you say we've opened. Thank you again.
Well, no, thank you. And not only a message, we're open. It's a message, hopefully come to Kenya, bring your family, come on safari, along with whoever you want to come, and please explore our wonderful country.
We will. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.